I've recently been thinking about a few people I've known over the years, friends, acquaintances, who had a pretty bad health problem that they could have dealt with. They just had to do something to live in a healthier way, yet they refused to do it. It doesn't really even matter what it is, because I've known so many people like this. They had to change their diet in some way. They had to start exercising. They had to lose weight. They had to do some sort of something that would really be good for their health. Something that may not on the surface even have been that hard to do. Yet they couldn't do it. They wouldn't do it. They had family members or a partner, a husband, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, a doctor even, who was telling them, do it. You've got to do this thing. You've got to do this thing. And they just wouldn't do it, refused to do it, couldn't do it, even knew that they had to do it, but made excuses for it, didn't do it. And it actually ended up killing them. I can think of actually quite a few people for whom this has been the story. And it always made me wonder, why wouldn't they do this thing that could have saved their life, could have helped them so much? And, well, what I saw when I thought about it is that this thing that they were supposed to do, losing weight, changing their diet a little bit, exercising, this was just like unplugging the cork on the bottle and letting out all the stuff that was buried inside. I think these people knew at some level that if they started doing this supposedly simple and easy thing that could save them, it actually would have thrown their life into terrible turmoil. What I realized is when I was thinking about all these different people, each one actually, they were all fundamentally living in a dissociated state, an emotionally dissociated state, where their feelings were pushed down. Their feelings from their unresolved traumas, their anger, their rage, their sadness, their pain, their despair, their sorrow, their feelings of horrible betrayal, the memory sometimes, the emotional memory of the unjustness that they suffered in their lives. This is all pushed down. Everything is below the surface, and it's buried beneath a thick wall, a wall of concrete and barbed wire and electricity, anything to keep those feelings down. And these people were surviving in their lives, surviving, as it were, going through their days and months and years and actually decades by keeping all this stuff pushed down and buried. This is how they kept their lives together. And by keeping all that stuff pushed down, buried, out of sight, out of touch, dissociated, they were in control of their lives. They were able to go on, but it was killing them. All that stuff down there was brewing around, and it did have consequences in their lives. It was ruining them, and by keeping it down, they had to do things that were very, very unhealthy, the very things that their doctors, or their friends, or their partners were saying, change it, it's killing you, because pushing all that stuff down, not dealing with unresolved traumas, it has consequences. In one way or other, keeping all that stuff buried, not healing traumas, does have consequences. But why wouldn't they change it? Well, I think of an analogy that I've learned along the way, something that I've seen. It's when people's bathtub gets plugged up. And several times in my life, I've been in people's homes where their bathtub got plugged up and there's stuff in the drain, like a plug of hair and all sorts of other nasty stuff that got stuck in there. And often what people do is they try to push it down further, use a plunger or something, or maybe even pour poison down, make it go away, don't deal with it. But the easiest way to deal with it, at least on the surface, if you're good at it, is to begin to pull it out. That's the equivalent of changing the behavior, unplugging the cork in the bottle. And the problem is when you start pulling stuff out of the bathtub, sometimes there's a lot of stuff in there, and it is really nasty and disgusting. And it's ugly, and it's sometimes like so gross, and sometimes it can smell bad too. This is kind of what it's like when people begin healing. And what I've seen is when you start pulling stuff out of the drain of a bathtub, it's like you can't go back. Once you start, you have to keep going, and you have to keep going, and you have to do it all the way to the end. And I think unconsciously that is what people know about themselves when they don't want to start doing the basic surface things to live a healthier life. If they do that basic surface thing, start eating differently or exercising or finding different ways to lose weight, well, I think they know at some level that it's going to start the ball rolling in a different direction in their life. Some sort of momentum will happen, and they are going to lose control of their existence. They're going to start healing. Their feelings are going to start coming out, and it's going to get ugly. And from what I've seen, a lot of people would rather die unhealed. They would rather die dissociated. They would rather die in denial and keep it all pushed down than suffer the pain of what happened. Now, I think a lot of people don't want to suffer, not only because it's painful, but because it feels hopeless, because they have no experience of suffering coming to any good. Suffering to many people in their actual experience is an end in and of itself. Once they start to suffer, then nothing good comes of it, and it just ruins their life. And the only thing that feels better is pushing down those feelings. They would rather push down those feelings and die as long as their feelings are out of the way. Sometimes even die on the morphine drip than feel their feelings. And the reason that they don't want to feel that suffering is because they never figured out how to convert that suffering into grieving. Perhaps they didn't have anybody who they knew in their whole life who ever really loved them in any way, who could actually nurture them and help them convert that suffering into something that was useful, that was meaningful. I think of that Lao Tzu quotation from the Tao Te Ching that says, and this is a paraphrase, "The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step." Once we take that first step on the journey, it creates a momentum, and it is hard to turn back. It's easy to not take that first step at all, but once we take that first step, it's like the journey is on. And I just think for a lot of people, it's easier not to ever start. Or actually, and I think this is the sad reality, actually, when I think of all these people that I conceive of, one after another, people who say, I don't want to take that first step. I don't want to take any steps toward my own health. I'd rather just die the way I am. I think actually at some point in their history, all of them did actually try at some point. Naively, humbly, they went into opening up their feelings, looking at it, perhaps in a conversation with a friend, perhaps in a journal, even for those who journal, perhaps in a relationship with a psychotherapist. And it didn't work. It was too painful. They couldn't figure out how to turn it into grieving. They couldn't make sense of it and grow from it. Instead, it just overwhelmed them. It was too horrible. And they said, I'd rather keep it shut down. And that's how they have modeled the rest of their life, their existence. And if they have children, often they model this type of existence for their children. Or some of these people, actually, because I can think of a couple of these people actually who became psychotherapists. And this was the model that they taught to their clients, that the goal of life is to take your suffering and to push it down and to learn how to be happy without ever dealing with it. Forget healing trauma. Maybe even they talked a good game about being trauma-informed and trauma-oriented and helping people with trauma. But really all they did with helping people with trauma was helping them push their traumas down, to convert the bubbling up suffering of their traumas and their post-traumatic feelings and to push it down into dissociation, into forgiveness, into denial. And to do what they did and stay shut down forever.